In this video, we will discuss Spark classifications using UnifyML SQL. Here we see the random forest classification model using a UnifyML query. Here we run our Spark random forest classifier model. Now let's see this simple Spark random forest classifier using a UnifyML query. Simple Spark random forest classifier. Input table has mentioned your input table. Input columns is mentioned your required input column. Target column as the target column to be predicted. Hyperparameter tuning true means if you want a better model. There are two types of tuning, train validation and cross-validation, mentioned as per your requirement. Max bin perms. Maximum number of bins used for discretizing the continuous feature. Max depth perms. Maximum depth of the tree. Min info gain perms. Minimum information gain for your split to be considered at the tree node. Seed perms. Random seed perms. Save model. Output model name. I'm saving the output to the model because if you want to use the random forest classifier of this data further, predict. There are a few more parameters of this Spark random forest classifier predict. You can go through our UnifyML documentation. Input data type. If you want to change the data types of the columns, you can use the input data type parameter. Max bins, max depth, min info gain, seed and train sample size. Split the data into training and test data. Mention your training data sample. Hyperparameter tuning for a better model and tuning types and their parameters. Max bins, max depth, min info gain and seed pro. Parallelism. Parallelism, setting in parallel. Number of folds to separate the training and test data. Number of partitions to do. On which column the partition should be done. If you want to apply the PCA model, mention your input PCA model name. Save model. Output model. Data cleaning. If you want to clean the data, there are 4 methods. Remove row, remove duplicate, remove outliers, fill. For fill with values, if we have any null values in the data or if you want to change the data of the column, you can use the fill with values. Data scaling. Scale the data. There are 4 methods to scale the data. Min-max scaler, standard scaler, normalizer, and binarizer. For min-max scaler, you have to mention the minimum value and the maximum scalar value. Input cache ID. If your data is previously saved in the cache, no need to mention the input table. In place of the input table, mention input cache ID. Bytes per chunk. These are all the input arguments of this Spark random forest classifier model. Based on your requirement, you can mention your input parameters. Run this query. This query will execute in the backend of our UnifyML server. This is the output of the Spark random forest classifier model. Accuracy, test error. These are the remaining values, and the output model name is saved. Now let's see this Spark random forest classifier predict. Spark random forest classifier predict input table is mentioned here. Predict input table. Input model name is mentioned as your input model save for the random forest classifier. There are many more parameters for the random forest classifier. You can go through our UnifyML documentation. Input data types. If you want to change the data types of the column, mention your input data types argument. Data cleaning. There are 4 methods of data cleaning. Remove row, remove duplicates, remove outliers, and fill. For fill with values, if you want to fill any null value, or if you want to change the data, you can use the fill with value parameter. Data scaling. Scale the data set. There are 4 methods. Min-max scaler, standard scaler, normalizer, and binarizer. For min-max scaler, you have to mention the minimum and maximum scalar value. Input cache ID. Data is already saved in the cache. No need to mention the input table. Then instead, you mention the input cache ID. Save to DB. If you want to save your predicted output to the database, mention the Save to DB option on the output table. Overwrite output table. If you want to overwrite the output table, if it exists, then mention the Boolean value is true. Save to CSV. If you want to save the CSV, predict the data to CSV, use the Save to CSV option. Output CSV name. Bytes per chunk. These are all the input arguments of the Spark random forest classifier predict. Mention as per your requirement. Run this query. This query will execute in the backend of our UnifyML server. This is the output of the Spark Random Forest Classifier predict. These are input columns, and this is the output column. In a similar way, we can run any of the classification datasets using the Spark Random Forest Classifier based on your prediction requirement. Thanks for watching this video.